So what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling my favorite CDs of 2020. Well, vinyl. Welcome to the Alan Rosenberg Archives. Springsteen. What else we got? Chris Nelson and Suede. Okay. We're gonna go upstairs and start talking. So if anybody's tuning in, thank you for tuning in. This is my first video ever. I've been doing this on paper and on Facebook for well over a decade, and there's a couple of people that seem to like it, so I figured join the modern age and maybe other people would be interested. So if you're watching this eventually, thanks for tuning in. This is my best of 2020 list video. As you saw from the earlier video over here, I actually purchased officially 127 albums this year. In actual fact, I bought over 400 CDs in vinyl. It's kind of an OCD thing, but in order to make it into my database, I have to listen to it 5 times and then to decide if I want to keep it and then put it into the archives. And sometimes I don't keep it, I just give it away or sell it or donate it. So it's not about having a huge collection, although I have a pretty big collection. It's about having stuff that I really like. That's the story. The best of is basically the stuff that I played, what I call turntable time. You know, I could analyze things to death, and critics do, but at the end of the day, what's important is what do you want to listen to and what did you listen to? And that's how I choose the best ofs. Most of them are from 2019, 2020. If you looked at that list of 127 that I showed briefly before, there's a lot of archive stuff that I'm just catching up. If I like a band, I try to get everything by them, and sometimes it takes a long time. And sometimes it takes a long time to listen to them, a minimum of 5 times. Anyway, let's get started. First that I'm going to start to were 2 really great purchases. This is this mega Keith Richards Talk is Cheap box. This does not count. You won't see it on that list because it doesn't count as a purchase from this year because I bought it when Talk is Cheap actually came out. But it's a magnificent, huge box set. And just wanted to mention it because it actually came out, I think, last year, but I got it this year. But it doesn't count because it counts for the year that I originally purchased it. Same with this. This is one of my favorite Rolling Stones albums. I think it's the most underrated Rolling Stones album. Goat's Head Soup. This is a mega box set. I splurged and treated myself to this. It comes with DVDs, box sets. I actually had everything on it. It comes with the Brussels Affair live CD. I've had that for years. And this is my 6th or 7th version of Goat's Head Soup. But this is a historic release for the Rolling Stones because it's not remastered. It's actually remixed by Giles Martin, who George Martin's son, is doing all the Beatles stuff. I kind of have mixed feelings about this, but I could do its own video. This doesn't count towards a purchase this year either because I got this in 1973, and maybe I'll show a hint later, but that was the first year, that's my ground zero, that I did this top 3 and keeping track of my archive started in 1973. This was my #1 album of the year in 1973. This is a very special album for me, and it was great purchasing it, although I do have mixed feelings. So these don't count, but I just wanted to show them because they're pretty cool purchases. So now I'm going to discuss, out of the 127 that I bought this year officially that made it into the database, and there's another almost 300 downstairs that I bought this year that I didn't even get to, that'll be for next year and years after that. These are the most listened to albums that made it into the database. These are in no particular order, but these were my most played albums. We'll start with this one. This was a shocker to me. I was at a thrift store and I saw this. This is Carla Bruni. So Carla Bruni is kind of a famous rock and roll woman. She dated Mick Jagger, Eric Clapton, and others. And she's actually now the First Lady of France. How things change, I guess. Anyway, I saw this and I had heard about it. It's called French Touch. And this is not the kind of album that I would ever buy. I would never think I'd buy a Carla Bruni album. And this is a covers album. And you're thinking, Carla Bruni covers, what is this? I got to tell you, this is a great, great album. It's very jazzy, it's very different, and a personal annoyance to me is when people do covers and they do them just like the originals. I like Guns N' Roses. I think they're really overrated, but I like them. But it drives me crazy that Live and Let Die is on the radio all the time, and it's basically, to me, a slight upgrade over McCartney and Wings version, which is the original version, which is superior on Wings Over America. But you never hear the Wings Over America. You only hear the Guns N' Roses version. If you're going to do a cover, change it. Make it in your style. Like, obviously, Hendrix All Along the Watchtower. There's a ton of them. Not that this is like Hendrix All Along the Watchtower, but this is very different versions of songs. Jimmy Jazz, a Clash song. There's a version of Miss You by the Stones that you would not even recognize. I've never been a big ABBA fan, but she does a great cover of The Winner Takes It All. She does a version of Highway to Hell, the ACD classic, it's beyond belief. And she also does one of my all-time favorite songs, Perfect Day by Lou Reed. I don't know if you'll find it, but most people probably don't buy CDs anymore. If you have company at home and you want some nice background music, put this on, and I can guarantee you the people are going to be like, what the hell are you listening to? This is great. Carla Bruni, Perfect Touch, a great pickup and a great album. So I'm a big Britpop fan. So what's Britpop? You know, in the 90s, it was Oasis, Blur, Pulp, Suede. It was a great time to be alive if you were British in Britain. It was kind of like the late 60s all over again. Beatles, Stones, well, they had Oasis and Blur. But the music at that time was great. They're great, great bands. And I still listen to those bands a lot, and I still get into those bands. This was a great pickup. This album's actually like 2 years old. Liam Gallagher, of course, the lead singer of Oasis. I think Oasis is a great band. Not all of their albums are great, but they're a really good band. I picked this up because I found it cheap, and I'm like, I'll give it a shot. Turns out this is it's a great album. If you like Oasis, this would be a great Oasis album, and they haven't had a great Oasis album in a while. It was shocking because Liam Gallagher is not the songwriter. Obviously, Noel is the songwriter. But he wrote these songs. He worked really hard. After Oasis, he did BDI, and it was not a huge success. This album is great, and it turns out after I got it, I saw a documentary on like a YouTube channel about the making. He really put his heart and soul into it. He was down on his luck, not financially, but emotionally. This is a really good album. If you like Oasis, you will love this one. He put another one out since then that I don't have, but I will definitely get. Good recommendation for you. Here's another one I got. I hate to use the word pet bands, but there's a lot of bands that I love that never really made it in a big way, but I have tons of albums, and my friends and colleagues who know me, I've talked about these bands for decades. One of my all-time favorite artists is this guy, Nils Lofgren. I was into Nils Lofgren before I was into Springsteen. Nils, I have all of his albums, and there's a lot of them. This is an interesting one. Back in '79, with the Nils Lofgren album, I should have took it out of it on vinyl. He did kind of working with Lou Reed at the time. And some of the songs were on Lou Reed's The Bells albums, and some of them were on the Nils album, which was one of Nils' best albums. This was leftover stuff that he found. He re-recorded as a trio and put this album out. It's okay. It's the best Nils Lofgren album in a while. I think since it's been a long time since he's put out a really good album. But this is not a great album, but his voice is a lot better. His voice got really, really deep, and he's gotten older, and his voice changed, and I respect that. But his last couple of albums just didn't do much for me. This is a pretty good return to form. Not great, but if you want to, try it out, a couple of the songs, Talk Through the Tears is a good song. City Lights is really good. It's okay, but it's good to see Nils getting back on form on his way anyway. Okay, before I was talking about the Britpop scene, there's a band called Suede. They were around then as well. Their lead singer is Brett Anderson. He has kind of a high voice, a little bit of you'd have to get used to it, an acquired taste. But funny thing about Suede is probably about 10 years ago, I was at a record show and I bought all of their CDs without ever knowing a single song. And I brought them home and I had so much stuff to listen to, and I just freaked out, and I said to my son, and he laughed at me. I said, why did I buy all these Suede albums? I'm never going to have the time to listen to them. And I wound up giving them all away. Well, over the last 3 years, I'm rebuying them all and now giving them the time that they deserve. They are a super band. And I was lucky enough to go to England this year, at the beginning of the year, before COVID really broke out, because my daughter was there. and I picked up some cool British CDs, and I got a bunch of Suede CDs, these deluxe editions with bonus tracks and all this. And I bought 2 more because they kind of broke up and they reformed a couple of years ago, and they put out 3 new albums. And one of them is called Blood Sports, a really good record, kind of commercial, but I like it a lot. They kind of like Bowie-esque, Roxy Music-esque, but at the same time they have this Britpop feel, melodic, really good. But they'll be back in a little while as well. So 1 of 2 that I got this year from Suede, Blood Sports. Now let's get into some of the meat as we approach the top 3. These are not top 3, but they're approaching it. I mentioned pet bands, which is, I guess, like a lousy way of saying it, but probably my most famous pet band amongst colleagues who know me is Wishbone Ash. Wishbone Ash is one of my favorite bands. I have over 70 of their albums. I have everything they've ever done. And this year they actually released a new album called Coat of Arms, which I did not get yet. I've heard it, but I haven't gotten the physical CD, and everything I buy has to be physical. So if I heard it digitally, it doesn't count. I actually ordered the album from Wishbone Ash themselves, and I haven't gotten it yet. It's lost in the mail. But earlier this year, I got this one. This is an authorized recording that they released from a live show in Glasgow Apollo in 1977. This was the front page news tour. I swear up and down about Wishbone Ash. It is a crime that the prime of Wishbone Ash is not played on FM radio every day, and that they're not more well known. With the Allman Brothers, they kind of invented the twin guitar sound. They are melodic, they rock, they're bluesy, they're everything, jazzy sometimes. The vocals are not so great, but they had 3 vocalists in their prime, so it didn't get boring. Different guys would sing different songs. Anyway, I just blown away by this song, this album, live at Glasgow Apollo in '77. If you know about music, if you could play at the Glasgow Apollo, you could play anywhere. It's kind of like what the Apollo in New York would be. Yeah, the crowd is raucous, and if they don't like you, they let you know that they don't like you, but if they like you, they appreciate it. This is Wishbone Ash Mach 2 with Laurie Weisfield at their prime. It's got 14 songs, and you want to hear a live killer band. This is no overdubs. This is right off. Actually, was recorded by the BBC. I had it on bootleg for years, but not the whole show. Oh, what a performance this is. Wishbone Ash, live at the Glasgow Apollo 77, one of my favorites of the year. One of the nice things about when I do these lists, and I was doing them on Facebook, and sometimes friends and friends of friends would write to me and say, you got to check out this band. Last year, people were like, check out the Avett Brothers, and I bought 2 or 3 of their albums last year, and I just loved them. And in fact, they won my Best New Artist of the Year award last year. I picked up 2 more of their albums this year, and they're just a really good band. I picked up this one called Mignonet. I think that's how you pronounce it. And this one, I and Lovin' You, which is the better one out of the 2. This is just a terrific album. I guess they're a really big band. I think they headlined and sold at Madison Square Garden. But I was not familiar with them. I knew their name. But thank you to my friend who recommended them last year. They were Best New Artists last year, and I will keep picking up all of their stuff. When I like a band, I will get everything. So I got 2 more of them. Those were good pickups. And I highly recommend it. I and Lovin' You is the better of these 2. This was an interesting find. I'm not the world's biggest Prince fan, but I probably have 10 or so of his albums. I like this. This is a recording of his demos. It's called Originals. This came out last year. And it's interesting to hear his demos, because his demos are really good quality. It shows you what a musical genius he is, and he plays all of his instruments. But I like the fact that it's kind of cool to hear his version of Jungle Love, which he gave away at a time, which is such an amazing song, and Manic Monday, which of course he was a big hit for the Bangles, and The Glamorous Life, Sheila E. These are his original versions. Nothing Compares to You, which was the #1 hit for Sinead O'Connor. Cool to hear that. It's a couple other really cool songs, classic funk with like Holly Rock. It's not great. It's not essential, but if you like Prince and you want to hear the original demos, it's kind of a good curiosity piece. I enjoyed it. Would run out. It's not the most important album to get, but it's a good one. One other one that was a shocker is this one. I am not a huge Joan Osborne fan, but obviously she's well respected, playing with the Grateful Dead and the Dead Offshoots, and I only had her album Relish, I guess it is, which is a huge record. I saw this for really cheap, and it's called Love and Hate, and I'm like, what the hell, $1? I'll try it out. It's an older album from 2014. I was blown away. It's kind of jazzy, but there's a lot of really great things on it. Also kind of mellow, a little kind of jazzy. You have people over, and you want some kind of cool, hippie, laid-back background music. This is a pretty good record if you download some of the tracks on here. It's a good recommendation. Joan Osborne, Love and Hate. I think I'm going to start getting some more of her albums because she's better than I realized. So, another one of my favorite bands, like most people's, is The Who. I have everything The Who's ever done. I love them. At the same time, they kind of annoy me because they've been around for 50 years, but they went from like 82 to Endless Wire, which is God knows how long, to, they've been milking the live show for years, but the Who albums are great. This year, or really I guess the very end of last year, but really this year for me, they released the self-titled album, The Who. I have 2 copies of it. They came out with 3 different versions of it. This was the special version I got because it had 3 extra bonus tracks, which was a good purchase because I thought the best songs were actually the 3 bonus tracks that were on this album. I thought it was a really good record. It's not top 3-able, but it's light years better than Endless Wire, which, boy, did I not like that album. It's better than It's Hard. It's better than Face Dances. I think those albums are better than a lot of people say they are. But this was a good return to form. I was lucky when I went to London and visit my daughter who was away at school. She was in, where were you? Kingston upon Thames. The Who was playing there that weekend at Kingston upon Thames in a club that Melissa would go to. She's sitting here, Melissa. And anyway, a great story is, I said, what the hell? We'll go to the theater in the morning and check out what's going on. We got there in the morning, and there was already a line for that night's show of The Who playing like acoustically. So we hung out talking to these people who traveled all over to go there, and they all had their tickets, and they were all exciting. And we spent the day in Kingston or wherever we went, in London, and then came back that night. And we came back, what was it, Melissa, about 20 minutes before showtime. I said, what the hell, let's go to the theater and check out the scene. And we went there, and it was just electric. They're playing in a club, The Who. I'm like, oh, what the hell? So I go over to a bouncer, and I talk to the bouncer. I'm like, hey, any way we can get in? I'm from America. I think I had a Who shirt on. I'm like, we came all the way, big Who fan. Could we get in? And he's like, I don't know, mate. Let me see. And he came back, and he says, how many are you? It's like, there's 3 of us, me, my wife, and my daughter. He let us in. The ticket prices, I think, were $20. And we got in. Talk about a thrill. It was actually a tough show to see because it was so crowded, and I'm 5'6", so we really couldn't see them that well. We would go up and down the staircase to catch glimpses of them. But they sounded amazing. So what a tip of the iceberg. What a great way to, extra thrill visiting Melissa in London. We got to see The Who in this little tiny club. But, of course, The Who, like a lot of these bands, they keep releasing the albums over and over again. So they suckered me into buying it a second time because now, at the end of this year, they released a new version of it with Live at Kingston, the very show that I was at. So now I have it twice because I have the actual concert we were at. It's a really good album, this Who album. Good return to form. Daughtry's voice sounds great. The songwriting is really good. Good job. Good job, Pete Townshend. All right, we're getting closer to top 3. So I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. I have over, I think, last count, 80 Bob Dylan albums. And I don't have all of his albums, but I have just about all of his albums. He released, of course, Rough and Rowdy Ways. Every critic in America was giving it 4 and 5 stars. Listen, it's a miracle that he's still putting out stuff, although it took a long time because he's been doing all these standards covers albums that I'm not thrilled with. Listen, I love Bob Dylan. His voice is an acquired taste now. That's not what it was. And I don't have a problem with that, although I don't want to see him in concert again because that wasn't so good. But, on album, great. Let him keep putting out the stuff, and I'll keep buying them. But Rough and Rowdy Ways is a good record. It's a grower. The first time a couple times I heard it, I was like, I don't know why everybody's giving this 3 and 4 stars. It's good. It's kind of mellow, and it gets into a groove. And when I want to relax, I can put it on. But to me, one of the things about Bob Dylan is not just his, you know, it's not just the music and it's not just the lyrics. His lyrics to me are important, but it's I'm song based. You know, it's what the song is. You know, they could be great lyrics, but if the song's not that good, it's great poetry. But I'm not so much a poetry guy. I'm more of a song guy. Dylan writes great melodies. I mean, all over his albums, and I love Dylan stuff that's not even that popular. When he did the Christian trilogy, Slow Train Coming and Saved and Shout of Love and Into Infidels. Infidels is one of my favorite albums by him. Empire Burlesque. I think those are great albums. They have great melodies. They have great songs. I honestly think that this album is lacking in great melodies. It just kind of, it's a good groove. It's kind of typical. You know, he does his couple of his bluesy songs. You know, Murder Most Foul people love. I think you liked it, Melissa. It's like 18 minutes. I don't know. To me, it's okay. You know, I guess if you want to sit there and analyze the lyrics, but to me, the last 10 minutes is just, it's all right. It's a good record. I think it's a grower. I like it more and more the more I play it. I don't think it's a, you know, critics are giving it 4 stars. If everything's 4 stars, nothing's 4 stars. Okay? Yeah. You know, I think it's great. God bless Bob Dylan with his age, and he's still putting out valuable stuff. It's a good record. I don't think it's a great album. It's certainly not, to me, anywhere near top 3. A lot of people saying it's the best album of the year. I guess it's just me. I don't get it. And I love some of the more recent albums. You know, Time Out of Mind, Modern Times were all top 3 albums for me. But this one, nah, it's good. Good every once in a while to listen to. Rough and Rowdy Ways Dylan, not top 3. So this is a great story. This is obviously AC/DC's Power Up. I'm not the world's biggest AC/DC fan. I don't think I only have about 10 of their albums now. AC/DC, I appreciate them what they are. Great riffs, you know, great power. Yeah, one of the all-time great bands, but they're so AC/DC. I can't listen to AC/DC all the time. I have to be in a mood. And Brian Johnson, the singer, seems like the coolest guy when I see him on TV. Somebody so big and so wealthy. He just seems so down to earth and he's so cool. But I hate to say it, and I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I actually prefer the Bon Scott stuff over the later stuff. There's only so much I could take of his vocals, where Bon Scott to me has more of a bluesy, more well-rounded vocal style. With that said, your heart's gotta be in on this one because of what AC/DC went through. You know, with Brian losing his hearing and the death of Malcolm Young, and the drummer and the bass player having such problems and leaving the band, and somehow they were able to put it together for this album and use a lot of the songs that were left over when Malcolm was still alive. And the thing is, if you like AC/DC, this is a killer album. There's not a bad song on it. I can understand why people would put this way up in the best albums of the year, and I am. It's not top 3 for me, just because I can't listen to AC/DC all the time. I have to be in the mode. But this is a pound for pound. This is a killer record, and your heart's just got to warm up to what they went through and put it back and get it back together and release such a strong album. I think it's a much stronger album than the last 2. So great job, AC/DC. Not top 3, but great return to form. One more before we get into the top 3. This is somebody I've seen a lot of YouTube videos, and it's kind of hard to find their album because I don't typically just order on Amazon. I go to all my local record stores and flea markets and estate sales and things like that. That's where I get a lot of my stuff. This is a woman named Samantha Fish. She's the real deal. She is, most of this is a 3-piece. She's the soul guitarist. What does she sound like? She's like blues rock. She reminds me of like a Bonnie Raitt, Susan Tedeschi. She's got that kind of voice. There's some really good videos on YouTube of her. I think this is her most recent album. This came out in 2019, yeah. It's a really strong album. Samantha Fish. It's called Killer Be Kind. The problem I have with her is the same problem I have with Bonnie Raitt. And I have a lot of Bonnie Raitt albums, and I have a lot of Tedeschi trucks and Susan Tedeschi. I have to be in the mood for them, almost like AC/DC. I can only take them in limited quantities. After a while, it gets to grate on me. The funny thing is, on this album, there's stuff on here that when she gets a little commercial. There's a song called Love Your Lies, Fair Weather, Dream Girl. You could put them on YouTube. They're beautiful songs, and I think they're far superior as opposed to just that bluesy that is more Bonnie Raitt and more Susan Tedeschi, which is more grating. But overall, this is a really strong record. She writes a song. She's the real deal. And Samantha Fish, congratulations for whatever it's worth. You are going to win my Best New Artist. This is the first album I ever got from you, and I will always be on the search for your future records of yours, and eventually get your whole collection because you're the real deal. Okay, I hope you're still listening. We're up to my top 3 of 2020. I'm going to show you the 3, but not in any particular order, and then we'll tune into the end. We'll actually put it into the database, the official top 3 of the year. It's been a great year for music, and one of the best stories is this one. Bruce Springsteen, Letter to You. I'm a big Bruce Springsteen fan, and I have everything. Also, I have probably 70, 80 Springsteen albums, including bootlegs and rare stuff. The funny thing about Springsteen, as much as I love him, I don't love all of his albums. There's albums that he's put out that just didn't do much for me. But when he puts out an album that I love, it's just off the chart. I really liked High Hopes. That was the top 3, and that was kind of a mishmash of stuff, but it worked really well. That was the last really big album for him. And then last year he did Western Stars, which I was blown away by. I just think that is just like a cinematic masterpiece, and that went top 3 as well. I think that was my number 3 album last year. This came out of nowhere. I have not seen the documentary, but I know the story. Obviously, he put together the E Street Band, I guess before COVID, and they recorded for a week live in his studio. And you put this album on once, and it just explodes out of your stereo. If you have a stereo, I have a nice surround sound system. Boy, it's just so powerful. It just sent chills up and down your spine. It's just a great return to form, even though Western Stars was phenomenal. It's like a completely different artist. And that's one of the great things that I love about Springsteen. He's an artist. And I want to get everything he does. Not everything he does I love, but that's what an artist is. He takes risks and he does different things. And this one's kind of a throwback. It's like he got into the point, I guess I didn't see the documentary. I want to play with the E Street Band live and get that explosive sound. And he does it. It's not a perfect album. It's funny, I had a really interesting conversation with a friend of mine, Sandy, who was and is a huge Springsteen fan long before I was and long before anybody I knew in high school. He was a huge Springsteen fan. And I was like, hey, what do you think of Letter to You? Isn't it phenomenal? He was like, well, some of it's great. Some of it's kind of, I don't know if he used the words, but it's kind of like Springsteen by numbers, what you would expect for him to do with the E Street Band. And I kind of get that. There are some songs on here, Burning Train, I don't know, Ghost, which he did on Saturday Night Live. I'm not sure why. They're certainly really good songs. And if it was easy to do, everybody would do it. Even Springsteen by numbers is tough to do. But you can sense it. He does the break with the band, and then they kick back in. And it's just what you kind of would expect. But it works really well. But the great stuff on here is unbelievable. I have, for many years, I have a bootleg version of If I Was the Priest. And it's like really mellow. It's so incredible on this album that it gives you chills. You're like, oh my God, I wish he could play live. Because you just want to hear that. In fact, you'd want to see him live just to play this album, and you wouldn't even miss the other stuff. That's how good this album would be live. It's just great. A couple of things. I really love House of a Thousand Guitars, but when I play it, it drives my wife and my daughter crazy because it's like, if he says guitars one more time, guitars, 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 Melissa's here laughing. I get that. It could borderline, annoying maybe, but it's a great song. Some of the stuff is kind of paint by numbers for Springsteen. The Power of Prayer doesn't do much for me. Ghost is just okay. But Janie Needs a Shooter is amazing. I know it's an old track. And it's kind of a fun listen to hear Springsteen like in his old way. What he talks about like from his first 2 albums where he's just so verbose and there's so many lyrics. It's kind of where he was like the new Dylan. He's just spewing out lyrics. And I'm certainly not saying he was better than, he's just different. But when you hear it on here, you just smile. You're like, oh my God, it's kind of neat to hear that again with all of those lyrics. But it's just a really nice album. I like how it opens, really acoustic with 1 minute you're here, and then it just explodes into Letter to You, and it ends really nicely with I'll See You in My Dream. It's overall a great album. It's not a perfect album, but definitely top three. So I mentioned Suede before with Bloodsports, which is a really good album. But there's another album, the second album they did when they reformed, is this one called Night Thoughts. I got this in the UK. It actually comes with a movie. They made a movie of this, and apparently when they played live overseas, because they're really big over there, but not pretty much unknown here, the opening of the concert, they played this whole album behind a curtain, show the movie, because it's like a visual, it's a conceptual piece, and then they would come back for the second half and do a show. I can't tell you how I am so blown away by this album, Night Thoughts. It's an artistic piece of work. It's cinematic. It's widescreen. It's CinemaScope. It is just glorious. I'm a sucker for symphonic rock. It just gives me chills. And this album is very symphonic. It's eerie. Song for song, it's not perfect, but as a theme, if you sit down, you have to listen to this from beginning to end for like 45 minutes, 50 minutes, and it just takes you away. It doesn't sound anything like The Wall, but it kind of reminds me of like, if you love The Wall, and The Wall is one of the greatest albums of all time, right? But if you break The Wall down bit by bit, there's parts of The Wall in the middle that's kind of slow, and as individual songs, they're not much, but they're important for the overall theme. And they work. Same with this. Not every song on this album is great, but it's crucially important for this overall listening experience. This is an album with a capital A. This is not meant to be heard bit by bit. But if you like symphonic, moody, dark, I mean, it opens up with a guy going into the sea fully clothed off the British coast committing suicide. And then there's a scene where his father, who's older, is trying to commit suicide, and the girlfriend's trying to save him. And it's heavy duty, but also some of it's really melodic. If you want to give it a little taste, I can't even read this. There's a couple of songs that are kind of commercial on there. So you can go online and check out Tightrope is a phenomenal song. I Can't Give Her What She Wants. When You Were Young. I Don't Know How to Reach You. These are commercial songs, but not like a hit commercial. They're just melodic, but dark and moody, and I love this album. I will play this album for the rest of my life when I'm in a mood. It is that good. So congratulations to Suede, because anytime somebody stretches themselves, like Springsteen did last year with Western Stars, it's wonderful, and this is an artistic piece of work. Whew. Great job, Suede. And the final album in the top three is, a couple of years ago it was a really bad year for music, but I got the Star Is Born soundtrack, and I really liked it. I am not a Lady Gaga fan at all, but I thought that was a great soundtrack. And it sounded so real. And the reason why it was real is because Lukas Nelson and Promise of the Real were the band that were in that movie and supplying that music. And that's why it felt so genuine, because it is genuine. Of course, Lukas Nelson's the son of Willie Nelson, and they've been Neil Young's backing band for the last, decade or whatever. I've been wanting to get into them individually, and this is an album they released 2 years ago called Turn Off the News and Build a Garden. I love the sentiment of that, and I followed it before I heard it. I stopped watching the news with Corona. It's just driving me crazy and finding it very depressing. I haven't built a garden, but I turn off the news and listen to a lot of music and watch a lot of Laserdiscs. But this is a pretty extended album. There's 15 songs on it. There's not a bad song on this album. I love it. There's only two caveats I have with this, and they're personal. I already said I'm a really big Nils Lofgren fan. Nils Lofgren in his prime has like this high voice that sounds very Nils Lofgren. Lukas Nelson has the same voice. I was playing this for the first time, and my wife came down. She goes, "Wow, that's really good Nils Lofgren." I'm like, "It's not Nils Lofgren, it's Lukas Nelson." It's not a criticism of Lukas Nelson. It's just kind of strange if you're a big fan of somebody like it. Just sounds so much like the other Nils Lofgren on some of the songs. The other thing about it is, I really like whatever you would call Americana. This album's a little slick. It's a little overly produced in a way. I think I would like it even more if it was a little bit more gritty. And apparently, he released an album after this with some of the songs with the original grittiness. I have to get that album because I think I'll like it even more. But with that said, this is just a spectacular album. Check out the song "Turn Off the News, Build a Garden." There's two versions of it. There's an acoustic version that's even better. What's that? Stars Made of You is a killer track. It's like funky. There's a lot of variety in this album. I really like it. I would love it even more if it was a little bit rawer, but it's just terrific. They're a band I don't think they have too many albums, but I'll be getting more and more of them. They're a real deal, obviously. Lukas Nelson, Promise of the Real, Turn Off the News, Build a Garden, top 3. Stay tuned. I'll be right back as we put the 1, 2, and 3 in order. So again, thanks for tuning in. I hope this wasn't painful. I hope it was semi-enjoyable, and maybe eventually people will start watching some videos, and I'll keep making more. But it was fun for me, and so thanks again. I'm going to end it now. I'm going to actually show very quickly my top 3 and best new artists from 1973 all the way to now. Those were done in those years. Like, this is not retrospective. In 1973, I did this, and those are my top 3 in 74 and 75. So it's kind of like a diary of my musical life. And I was really young, but I had good taste in music thanks to having an older sister who had great taste in music. So that might be kind of cool, and maybe I'll do shows on those individual years down the line. But I will type in live the top 3 for this year. Out of the 3 that you just saw, we'll pick 1, 2, and 3. Samantha Fisher's best new artist. And thanks so much again, and hopefully I will see you again.